to have you see it the opposite viewpoint. And so that's what they're here today to do, to give you their views on the mental health issues that Pennsylvania perhaps, or at least Dauphin County. They are peer support specialists from the clubhouse, and also their views on medications that are used within the mental health field. So I'm who's going first.
Okay, I'm just gonna do a really quick survey. I'm gonna ask you guys a couple questions. Raise your hands if it is true, and keep your hand down if it is false. Okay, do we got that? Okay, so my name is Dan. Do you agree that that's true? I have purple hair. Very good, you guys are great. Okay, mental illness is a biochemical brain disease. Okay. Mental illness can be an indicator of violence.
What?
Violence. Okay. Folks that are mentally ill are permanently disabled and need to kind of recognize that my life is just going to be the system. Just so you know, nobody raised their hand. Oh. He's busy. He's now busy giving permission to videotape us. What other questions do we want to ask? I forget. Do you have one?
How about is strongly associated with genius?
Mental illness can be strongly associated with genetics. Okay. All right. So it's early in the morning. I'm going to do a real quick icebreaker. Everybody stand up. We're going to do some calisthenics. Now that I got your baseline on what's going on, we're going to do some calisthenics. And this is really important because when you guys are nurses, you're going to be doing a lot of charting, a lot of paperwork, and a lot of fun stuff. So you got to have this very specific calisthenic muscle group worked out. So everyone get your feet about shoulder width apart. Stick your hands in front of you, palms facing each other, fingers spread wide. Bend your arms at a 90-degree angle and close all your fingers but your index finger. Now follow me. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Do you feel the burn? Yeah. Okay, we're going to switch this up a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So with that, I'm going to bring to you my co-worker of 5 years. We work together at the Mental Health Consumers Association, helping to close Harrisburg State Hospital. We have become partners in crime so much that people who meet me that have never met Matthew call me Matthew, and people who meet Matthew who have never met me call him Dan. That's how much we have become joined at the hip in people's perception. I'm going to turn it over to Matthew to begin the official presentation.
In the fall of 1983, I hit the University of Pittsburgh. Lean, muscular, tan. I had the highest SAT scores in my graduating class. I had advanced placement credits in calculus and biology. I took a placement test in honors chemistry and did better than any incoming freshman in the history of the school. I placed out 2 semesters of chemistry. I seen my fellow students advocating it all together. I was the guy that slept until 2 o'clock in the morning, talking about life and their problems and their worldview, and all I did was sit and listen, asking questions, and somehow that made me a genius. But anyway, I was the guy that helped them study for their tests, helped them with their written assignments, helped explain to them things they didn't understand. I seemed to understand everything, I seemed to be able to explain everything. What they didn't know was I was failing out of all of my classes. And they didn't know because I was in sophomore classes and they were freshmen. I had this problem. I couldn't read well at all. I couldn't write. They were huge struggles for me. Switching letters, switching words, skipping sentences. Written assignments weren't being turned in. I also had test anxiety, so even when I knew the material, I wasn't doing well in tests. It got so bad that I just stopped going to class altogether. Meanwhile, my friends that I hang out on campus with didn't know. They thought I had this wonderful future ahead of me, and the whole time I just wanted to die. About 2 years before the end of the semester, I got a phone call from my mother, and she had been getting my grades, which were obviously almost all Fs. And she decided that with all of my academic gifts that I so obviously had, if I was too lazy and undisciplined to make the kind of commitment I had to make to go to college, I wasn't going to come home and sponge off them. I was going to find some place to live and get a job, and maybe a good, healthy dose of reality would give me the commitment I needed to go back to college. That was probably the point in my life where I came closest to taking my own life. I had keys to the Cathedral of Learning, which is the tallest building in Pittsburgh, because I was an honors cabinet member, so I could get in there after midnight. The honors cabinet was on the 34th floor. We were told it was the highest classroom in the free world, and I thought, what a wonderful place to make a statement. I had all these obviously wonderful gifts, and yet the world as it was simply seemed to have no place for me. So I decided I was going to jump. I actually got on the windowsill of the 34th floor, picked up the phone, and called the best friend I ever had. Now, he was smart enough and know me well enough to know that that was not a debate he was going to win all over the phone. So he asked me just to hold on long enough for me to get here. And he took me home, back to his place, and he listened as I wept. And he had no answers, but he was just there. And at that time, that's what I needed. Eventually went back to my hometown in Lancaster. I got a job. I got a place to live. Another problem I had when I was flunking out of college was I put on a huge amount of weight. I hit campus at like 33-inch waist. I got up to like a 48-inch waist while I was flunking out of college. It happened very, very quickly. So now, not only was I a lazy, undisciplined college dropout, I was fat too. But I knew a lot about chemistry. So I started experimenting with legal stimulants, over-the-counter stimulants, and any health food supplement I could find that was associated with increasing energy and losing weight. And I lost a great deal of weight. In 1 year, I went from a 48-inch waist down to a 32-inch waist, working out, holding 2-3 jobs at a time. And at first, it seemed to be working. These chemicals were giving me all the drive and ambition I always thought I lacked. I had much more sense of discipline. I actually bought myself a Speedo bikini bathing suit because I wanted to show off the six-pack abs that I worked so hard to get. I never got a chance to do that because new problems started happening. I started getting these conversations in my head trying to explain all the things in my world about my life I could understand, constantly talking to myself. Very, very fast-paced. And another problem started happening. Facial expressions and body language. Those things that people say without saying. I was becoming so much more aware of those than I ever was before. And all that extra communication that was happening was getting very confusing. There were times I'd be near people who were talking to each other about other people, and I'd hear parallels in what they were saying about those people and myself, and drawing metaphors and come to the conclusion that they were really talking to me about things they didn't like about me. And they just had the courage to say that to my face. Things got so bad that one day I was driving to one of my jobs, going down the road, did not know where I was or how I got there. And all these feelings and thoughts were just rushing through my head. So I pulled over to a payphone, if any of you still remember what a payphone is, and I called a hospital to try and explain to them what was happening. And I was so confused that they literally had to ask me to get out my license and read my name off my license, but I couldn't even come up with my own name. And I got my first ambulance trip to a psych ward. I remember the intake evaluation with the psychiatrist. He shoved this piece of paper at me. I'm struggling to read it, and I get to the point where it said, has lost touch with reality. I looked at the doctor and said, reality? What is reality anyway? And he said, that's my point, sign here. So apparently, intake evaluation is no place to be waxing philosophical. So I remember being in a room with a psych tech who was taking my history, and the thoughts and feelings just rushing so hard and so fast. I just started screaming, I can't take this anymore. And I'm screaming and crying, and I got to find out what it was like to have 4 large individuals hold me down as a nurse injected me in the rear end with a needle. That needle was Prolixin, and I hated it. It made me feel dead and empty inside. I can remember sitting in the psych ward, looking at the clock, Looking up again later, and only 7 minutes had passed, and it seemed like an eternity. I couldn't imagine living like this. So my goal was to do what it is I thought they wanted me to do, say what it is I thought they wanted me to say, and just get out of there as soon as I possibly could. And I left on a huge cocktail of medications. I remember my first appointment with a psychiatrist. And he says to me, "This is your major tranquilizer. If you're feeling too high, tell me, I'll give you more of this. This is your antidepressant. If you're feeling low, tell me, and I'll give you more of this. This is your mood stabilizer. If you're swinging too high and too low, tell me, and I'll give you more of this. This is your anti-anxiety agent. If you're feeling too anxious, tell me, and I'll give you more of this." And it struck me that this man wasn't here to have me answer the big questions in life. He had one solution to any problem I could have: more pills. So I was living at home, sitting on the couch most of the time in my underwear, playing on my computer, watching TV, and not doing a whole lot else. I can remember sitting until my bladder was so full it hurt, because I needed that incentive to go to the bathroom, because otherwise the energy and discipline it took to get up off the couch and walk to the bathroom was just more than I could muster. Well, I didn't know what happened to me or why, but I'd never needed these pills before, so I decided I didn't need them. And that stiff kind of shuffling gait and drooling went away, so I wasn't advertising to the whole world that I was mentally ill anymore. I got my drive and my ambition back. I started working again. I went back to school. And for a while, things were going really, really well, until midterms and finals came around. And again, the anxiety and the mania came back, and again I ended up in the hospital. And this time it was far scarier before, because there were no pills to blame. There was no crazy dieting and exercise regimen to blame anymore. It was just life that set me back, and that was scarier. That started a period of 7 years when I was in and out of the hospital 7 times. Constantly having my life fall apart and having to start over again. And the period of stability in between was generally composed of digging ditches, washing dishes, doing whatever temporary job I could find to survive. And I was beginning to think, this is life. This is what happens to lazy, undisciplined, bipolar college dropouts. This is all I had to expect. Having these brief periods of meaningless stability and these huge crashes where I had to start my whole life all over again. And I felt I was becoming somebody that nobody could love, and certainly nobody would be willing to spend the rest of their life with.
When dreams are the only thing lucid and reality is strange, what do you do? Walking through a world of unreality, every event contradicting the one before that is only proven to be fact by the next. Overwhelmed by the paradox, you strive for serenity and pray that one day you may wake up from this nightmare. But then you realize it isn't a nightmare at all. It's really high noon and the whole world is living in your dream. You know now what it really is to be John Malkovich. Come on, none of you saw that movie?
Yes. Yes.
You know now what it really is to be John Malkovich, motivated by desires that aren't your own and held back by a conscience that belongs to some supernatural force, not God, not Satan, just a human-sized dancing cricket that won't get out of your life. You want to throw a tap shoe at his head. Tell him to go dance into someone else's life. No one else has a cricket. That's just obvious, but I do, and I don't even like bugs. And then the fairy tale starts to end. The ornate carriages all turn back into pumpkins, and I didn't lose that glass slipper. It just shattered. Thousands of pieces washed away by the torrential rains into the sewers and gone forever. All but one. The 4-inch spike. The only remnants of that tall stiletto heel, wet and shimmering under the street lamp. Its sharp points, your only way back to awake. Your only way back to that dreamlike existence that seems like some chaotic fairy tale. Death pulling you closer and closer to her, sucking what is left of your soul and reaping your heartbeat for the annual harvest that is celebrated every October all around the world. And the only one left fighting to keep you here is a cricket. That piece is called Fairy Dreams. I wrote it in the midst of being Mr. Schizophrenic being. I went to college. I was going to be an actor. Went off to college. I was just set on taking the stage by storm. I was going to win Tony Awards. I was going to accept my. You guys know what a Tony Award is?
Yes.
So many college students just look at me like, "What's a Tony Award?" They're great. So I was going to accept my Tony Award, and if you know what a Tony Award looks like, it's a little platform, and it's got a crescent, and it holds the medallion with the masks on it, and that kind of dangles from it. I was going to go up to the podium, and some of you know that might know that Alfred Hitchcock has the shortest Oscar acceptance speech ever. He just walked up to the podium and said, "Thank you." I was going to top that. I was going to walk up to the acceptance speech for my Tony Award, go like this, and make it spin around, and then turn around, and go. That was going to be my Tony Award acceptance speech. I was going to take the world over. I get to college, I find out that I am one of 2 freshmen in my theater department, which was awesome because I got to do a lot of stuff. Most freshmen are lucky if they get to mop the stage. I got to be in shows, I got to do technical work, the whole 9 yards. My academic caseload was 18 credits. I started academic classes at 8 o'clock in the morning. I took academic classes from 8 till noon. From noon to 3, I had 3 hours of dance class. Yes, I was Wilkes-Barre's one and only sumo ballerino. From 3 to 6, thank God. From 3 to 6, I would do set construction, run to the dining hall for dinner, get back for rehearsal at 7. The last show I did at college was a full-scale musical. I was in the chorus. I was a master electrician. I was helping to teach the stage manager how to stage manage. I was helping with the carpentry. I was helping with the painting. After rehearsal, because our designer had bigger plans than he had a crew, we would be there till 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, also working on the set so that it would be done on opening night. When I got done with the show, they said to me, go back to your dorm. You can't help us tear this down. You're not allowed to have a sledgehammer. You're going to kill someone. You're exhausted. Go home. So I go home and I lay down. And a couple hours later, I wake up in my bed. And I hear this scratching in my wall. They're getting louder and louder and louder and louder and louder. I couldn't figure out what it was at first. What I want to do is I want to take a poll. What do you guys think it was? Give me some nominations.
Mouse.
Do you know what? Everyone always guesses a rodent, and at $20,000 a year tuition, room, and board, it better not have been a rodent.
Was it a cricket? Cricket.
A cricket? Okay. So we have a rodent, we have a cricket.
Or you.
Me? Okay. So, okay, that's 3. We're used to only voting on 2s, so we're going to go with 3. How many people say it was a rodent? Okay. How many people say it was an insect or a cricket? How many people say it was me? You are all wrong. It was a demon that was coming to kill me. I realized that. It was a demon that was going to kill me. It was going to be a torturous death. I would never want, what I was imagining, I could never deal with. I was in a liberal arts school, so I also had to take biology. So by the time I got to the point that I was looking out at my floor, and it looked like the sea in Hades that they were boating through in What Dreams May Come, and arms were reaching up to my bed to grab me, I decided to reach over to the top of my dresser where my biology dissection kit was and use the scalpel to start slicing my arm. Because however I could kill myself could not be nearly as torturous as what these demons were going to do to me. Eventually I managed to get over to the phone. A friend of mine had called, got over to the phone and answered, and all I could say was, why do they hate me? It had been 2 weeks since I left my bed. Not to eat, drink, vacate, go to class, hadn't bathed, hadn't left my bed. My bladder really hurt. It hurt bad. I answered the phone, why do they hate me? That's all I could say. She called my next door neighbor, who was also a nursing student. He came over, he called campus security. Campus security came, they called the counselor for the campus. Counselor for the campus came, brought me to the emergency room, and the journey began. Suddenly I had a name. Like there were all these wonderful names. Have you guys heard some of the names? What do you guys think were the names? Schizophrenia? What was that? I heard schizophrenia, and then I heard you say something, but I didn't hear what it was.
I said schizophrenia.
Schizophrenia? Okay. Schizophrenia, schizoaffective, bipolar disorder, not otherwise specified, with psychotic features. The laundry list goes on and on. And they had this answer. You know, you have this disease, this brain imbalance, and these pills fix it. So you gotta take these pills. Okay, you're the doctor. Okay. So I take the pills. I started a cycle, and a cycle, and a cycle. And what ended up happening, I ended up disabled, told sometimes these meds just don't work, right and completely, and you just gotta accept that this illness is what it is. I was a patient at Harrisburg State Hospital, in group homes, in multiple treatments facilities. When I was a patient at Harrisburg State Hospital, I had put on so much weight, I had to be weighed on a pallet scale in the mailroom. And that's where I'm going to pause my story, turn it back over to Matthew, because we've been really, really heavy, and now we're going to get fun.
Excuse me just a second, I need to pace myself in this one. So give me just a bit. In the fall of actually in the spring of 1991, I was coming out of my 7th hospitalization, starting all over again after losing my relationship, my job, and everything. And this time, I ended up in a 30-day respite bed, which is where they put you until they can find someplace more permanent for you to be. And at that time, my county had 2 respite beds, one for a man, one for a woman. And they weren't just for mental health. Across the hall was a woman who was there because a man she was living with threatened her life. And when she went to the police to tell them this, they had a huge file on this man, and apparently he had threatened other women and some he had hurt very badly. So she was placed there for her own protection. And she was not allowed to go out alone. She was supposed to be escorted whenever she was in public, and I was just big enough to do that. Well, eventually they found me a place in a certified residential rehabilitation. And like all the other hospitalizations that I had before, I had weaned myself off of all the medications except lithium. And I got another temporary job. And the place said, you're doing well enough that we'd like to use your bed for someone else. The woman was back in her apartment, and she offered her apartment for me to live. Now, when I went there, I wasn't planning to be there for any period of time. She had physical disabilities. She had some impairment in all 4 limbs, and she had a violent temper. She'd get extremely angry over very little things. And I very vividly remember the first time she told me the story of how she got to be that way. When she was 15 years old, she was in a car accident. Both her femurs were broken, her pelvis was crushed. She lost a great deal of blood and suffered some brain damage from the lack of oxygen. When she came to the hospital, they told her parents that she wasn't likely to make it through the night. She did. She was in a coma, and the doctor said there was so much blood loss and so much brain damage, it might be too much to expect her to ever talk again. She learned to talk again. She was in a cast up to her waist, and when that cast finally came off, they said, you know, with the severity of the breaks in the bones and the odd ways they healed with the brain damage, it might be a lot to expect her to ever walk again. After 6 months of intensive physical therapy, she was walking again without a cane. And it dawned on me this woman had something I never had. I always had excuses. I couldn't read, I couldn't write, I had this bipolar condition. I had gifts, but the world just wasn't set up for somebody like me. I had excuses to fail. And I was getting good at failing and starting all over. I was getting a lot of experience at it. But this woman was somebody who, when she saw what she wanted, would go for it and would not quit. That woman is now my wife. After 7 hospitalizations in 7 years, I've been with her for 22 years and haven't had a single hospitalization since. When I came to know her, I was part of a drop-in center. And I was very frustrated with the lack of progress this drop-in center had made in 5 years I was involved with it. I had all these big ideas of the things we could be doing. It was my wife, Diana, who said, why don't you do something? You're always talking about what we could do. Why don't you do something? And we took that place over. And we had a democratically elected board that was elected directly by members. And all the board were people with serious mental health problems. And all the employees were people with serious mental health problems. We had no community appointed committee of well people. We had no professional provider organization overseeing us. We wrote our own budgets. We wrote our own grants. We set up our own policies and procedures. We were open 6 days a week. We had dances every Saturday night. We had a moving service that would move anybody with mental health problems from anywhere in the county to anywhere else in the county free of charge. In the workplace, it was Diana who convinced me I had the right to better than what I've had, and I had the ability to get it. I got a job in a factory. I started out the lowest paying position in the plant. After 10 years, I had worked my way to the highest paying position in the plant by hour, setting production records and quality control records every step of the way. And the whole time, I was still on lithium. But then a new problem arose. I developed a growth on my thyroid. It was determined to be precancerous, and they had to take my thyroid out. And I had known many people who were on lithium for decades who lost their thyroids to lithium. So even though lithium had been good to me, I decided it was time once again to try and get off the lithium. And it was scary because in the past, it was getting off the lithium that always sent me back to the hospital. So this time it had to be different. There's a problem with lithium in that doctors like to decide the dose of lithium based on blood levels. But the problem with lithium is it tends to make you gain a lot of weight. And as you gain more weight, you need more lithium to maintain the same blood level, and as they give you more lithium, you gain more weight. I had multiple friends who had ballooned up over 300, 400 pounds. Eventually, I had to be taken off of lithium because their kidneys were failing. I was up to 2,400 milligrams a day, 8 300 milligram tablets. I only met, in the 26 years I've been in mental health, I only met one person who ever took more than me, and he lost his kidneys to lithium. So this time I was going to decrease my dose 1 pill at a time. Deal with the higher highs and the lower lows and give my mind and body time to adjust. And when I got stable, try 1 less pill. Well, the economy went bad, and they sent my factory jobs to Mexico. And the county stopped funding my drop-in center, and I ended up at the Pennsylvania Mental Health Consumers Association where I met Dan. And I remember the first day I met Dan. Dan had something I never had. I saw him speak truth to power with respect in a way that I never could. PMHCA sent Dan and I to get certified peer specialist training. It was in that training that I first came across Mary Ellen Copeland's Wellness Recovery Action Plan. And part of that plan was the crisis plan. And in the crisis plan, you find supporters who know you and your illness well enough that if you get to the point where you don't trust yourself to make decisions, you give them permission to make decisions for you. And I needed that, because at that point I was down to 3 pills, and multiple times I tried to go down to 2, and things got just so scary to go back to 3. And I thought, maybe, with the crisis plan, with these 2 individuals in my life, I can get all the way off lithium. And I did. And some incredible things started happening. I found my voice. I found confidence. I found the ability to speak truth to authority. Because one of the things that psych meds do is they make you more stable, but they also make you more submissive. They give you less confidence in your own voice. They make you less willing to challenge authority. And if we're honest, that's one of the reasons why our institutions use them. It makes us easier to manage. In addition to finding my own voice, I started writing poetry and music again, like I only used to write when I was men. And it was better than it had ever been before. And I was still working. And I came to realize that, yes, the lithium brought me stability. And to this day, I do not believe I could survive the 10 years in that factory without the lithium. Sometimes I needed the lithium to hold my tongue. But there was a price to be paid for losing those highs and lows. There were gifts to be found in those highs and lows that I was being deprived of. So, I have a fear that people hear Dan and I talk and they think we're against medication. I'm not against medication. I think medication can be a stabilizing force. My concern is when that desire for stability is so great that we don't permit people to suffer and grow and figure themselves out and figure their world out with non-judgmental support around them. If stability is our only goal, people end up with lives that aren't very meaningful. And being told with their biochemical imbalance, that's all that is reasonable to expect. I believe that those people were allowed to take less medication and deal with less stability and were surrounded with the proper supports, they might have the opportunity to change and grow and become people like so many around them would never dream they had the ability to become.
Quick story. There's a guy, for the purpose of this discussion, we'll name him Brian. Brian lives in a big city, has schizophrenia. He hears voices. Brian is on low doses of medication that manage his symptoms, but don't